Hello and Happy New Year to everyone in the British and Irish Eagles family. It is me hosting tonight with Tony Brewerton joining me on the pod for the first proper episode of the new year, because Liam did his own little vanity project doing an interim pod after the Cowboys game. But we're going to be here tonight to talk through only a little bit, because there's not a huge amount to go through, but it's still worth talking about. It was a good game. The Giants mauling of the Giants in our own backyard, watching them come in with absolutely zero hope in the world and leave with even less than zero hope in the world, despite retaining most of their coaching staff and GM. But anyway, we can maybe touch on that in a bit, Tony, when I get your thoughts. But yeah, like I said, Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year, Tony. How was your New Year? Did you bring it in with a nice toast of Loch Lomond, or did you go for a bit more of a soiree with?
Well, I'll come on to that in a second. Happy New Year to you, and I think on behalf of everyone involved in the British and Irish Eagles, whether you're on the WhatsApp group or whether you're a host or anything like that, many, many congratulations to you and Lottie on the birth of the beautiful baby Evelyn, or Evie, as I think we will be affectionately calling her for the next however many years. How are you and Lottie coping with that? How's Bodie being as a big brother?
Sorry about that, everyone. I'm not sure how the editing is going to turn out when we come back to this, but I've just had to go and sort out one of my dogs, which has escaped man marking, as Tony eloquently put it before we jump back on. Me and Lottie now are working in zone coverage, as you quite eloquently put. There is now no, we can't man coverage anymore because we've got 3 pets to contend with on top of a child each. I've got the baby monitor next to me now, so if there are further edits, you'll know why. And Lottie is downstairs trying to cook dinner and also deal with a 10-day-old baby. But yes, no, she's great. She came a few days after Christmas, just before New Year's. It's definitely, for those out there who have had 2 children, will know exactly what I'm going through at the moment, and I hope that you're sending your sympathy through the airwaves to me right now, because my sleep, my morale, my ability to deal with the most basic human functions with lack of sleep are severely depleted at the moment. So I am trying to get back into a new routine. You know, your life changes when you have a child. It definitely changes when you have 2. But all that moaning aside, had to get out there. You know, she's absolutely gorgeous. She's beautiful. She's healthy. Bodie loves her. Bodie's look like loving, hugging and kissing his little sister, and that he's doing the typical toddler thing. He's 1 minute he's hugging her, the next minute he's kicking off, throwing shit across the room. But you know, that's standard. What happens really?
So are you?
Yeah, I'm throwing stuff at him. He's throwing stuff at me. We're arguing. We hug. We make out. I put him to bed. It's all hugs and kisses at the end of the day. That's just life right now. But yeah, no, thanks very much for asking.
It's all about finding a routine, isn't it? And I'm sure
it is.
I'm sure you'll get there. I'm sure
it
you'll
is
get
absolutely.
There.
So
to answer your other question, I had a really good New Year. Thanks, Phil. I didn't actually bring it in with a glass of Loch Lomond. I brought it in with a glass of our finest Glen Scotia. Glen Scotia is another brand that we have that I know a number of you love and enjoy, but it was my favourite dram that we produce as a business. It was a Glen Scotia.
I'll have to try that sometime.
A Glen Scotia 25-year-old.
Well, maybe not that price range.
It was absolutely sensational. But a great New Year, and the New Year has just started off as the old year ended, in terms of being crazy at work and looking forward to big football matches.
Yes, exactly. So we will get on to the big football match coming up Sunday. And I don't know about you, Tony, just a quick side note. As we've just discussed my current position, 9:25 on a Sunday is perfect for my routine. It's not on a Saturday. As much as I love the idea of getting a NFL match out of the way on a Saturday evening, Sunday evenings are when the weekends wind down. People are going back to work and stuff like that. But 6 p.m., as much as it used to be nice because it's an early kickoff, you get bath and bed and dinner always end up getting in the way, and you can't sit down and fully enjoy it. Whereas the 9:25 kickoffs are always a bit more suited to, although they finish 12-ish. I prefer that any day. I don't know about you. What's your preferential
I'm
kickoff?
not sure if I'm not sure if I'm an exception to this, but of all the slots in the week, my favourite slot has always been the 9:25 on a Sunday night, regardless of whether it's regular season playoffs or whenever. Of course, where we live in the UK and the time differences between us and the US never proves great for Thursday night football or the late slot, the Sunday night into Monday morning, and the worst of all of them, the Monday night into the Tuesday night slot. School night early in the week. It always sets you up for a really crap week. Actually, does that one?
Yeah.
But regular season, I love it when we're 9:25, purely and simply because, as you say, you've wound down after the weekend. You can get red zone at 6 o'clock and enjoy all the other games that are happening that typically you don't have time to catch up on as the week then progresses. And then you've got the birds from 9:25. So I'm delighted with the 9:25 slot this coming week. I am looking to the NFL gods in the hope that the schedule the following week, where God willing we beat the Packers on Sunday. I'm hoping that the schedule is as kind to me because I've got a couple of meetings tail end of next week, and I'm hoping that with a win, I'll manage to fly over to Philly next Saturday morning. But of course, if it's a Saturday afternoon slot that we end up getting, then a flight to Philly would be futile. So I'm really praying for A, the win on Sunday, and then B, that the schedule makers gives me a fair crack of the whip to get over there and actually witness the divisional matchup. But lots of water to go under the bridge between now and then, mate.
Yeah, and we won't obviously find out who our opponents are before our match because I believe that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Washington Commanders are the Sunday night
and Monday morning. Yep.
Into Monday morning. So I would imagine we will go into it not knowing an awful lot. But anyway, we can get into the playoff side of things. Let's quickly go over a few parish notices, touch on the game, try and keep it as quickly as possible, and then we will make a few predictions on how we think the playoff bracket's going to go, and a quick look ahead to the Packers game and decide whether we think we're going to win comfortably, cover the spread as Tony likes to hedge his bets without committing too much to a prediction, or whether we're going to come away with a bit of an L on our forehead. But I don't think any of us are predicting that right now. So, like I said, the Eagles see off the regular season with a comprehensive dispatching of the New York Giants. Tanner McKee got his first start in the NFL with Hurts in concussion protocol, and Kenny Pickett's dealing with his ribs. Ian Book was signed to the active roster, or at least as the emergency quarterback, but he's since been released and he's now been brought back to the practice squad as of this evening. So there's obviously some cover just in case. I'm assuming Kenny Pickett is unable to shake off his rib injury. No injuries were sustained, which is always a plus. And when you're resting so many players, that's the intention. That's probably the main goal overall, Tony. Resting Carter, Lane, Hurts, Slay, AJ, Dean, Zach Bourne, Barkley, Mailata, and Landon. So some real key players that you're going to be wanting fresh faced into the playoff game. Tacking on for that, AJ Brown I'm expecting the injury report isn't out yet, but judging by the beat writers, correspondence on Twitter, the Eagles are holding him out to sort of in the hope that his knee is as 100% as possible before Sunday. So I think the expectation that he is going to play. It's obviously going to be concerning seeing a DNP this late in the week. But in terms of that side of things, Tony, and the injuries and the resting, the Eagles made the right call in the end. The rest of the right players. Was there any other players that you sort of that played Sunday that you thought maybe couldn't or shouldn't have, or any players that you think have been rested that you could have maybe done with a little bit to keep the engine ticking over?
Well, first and foremost, hindsight is 2020, isn't it? We've managed to get through the weekend with a win against the Giants without picking up any additional injuries. Interestingly, there are some very notable injuries that have taken place over the course of the last weekend of the regular season, and the likes of Zay Flowers, Christian Watson, who we'll come on and talk about, and much vilification of the likes of the Bucks with playing Mike Evans, a bit of mirth about Josh Allen coming out and playing a snap to keep his streak going, etc., etc. But we've got through the weekend. I think there's been a bit of chat in the WhatsApp group, hasn't there, about the potential for Jalen to come out with a bit of rust on him on Sunday. But you would much sooner have given him the extra time to rest with a concussion, not pushed him to be back into the Giants game to throw on a couple of drives when actually we had a pretty good performance from Tanner. It shouldn't take Jalen too long to rub off the rust and get rocking again on Sunday. So I think we've played it right. Much conversation about Saquon and whether he should be going for the record or not. We could be sitting here now talking about having lost our star running back and our talisman going into the playoffs, and that could well mean the difference between a one and done or a deep run. So we never know what could have happened. What has happened is we've got a pretty healthy roster with a bit of fingers crossed and prayers for AJ Brown. But we're going into Sunday as healthy as we possibly can be, and in the absence of maybe a couple of downs for Jalen, I think we're in the best shape that we possibly can be. So well done to Nick Sirianni and his guys for the decision that they've taken. There you go. I've given them flowers.
I was about to say, sorry, just say that again, Tony. I
That's
believe you just
it.
gave some credit to Sirianni. No, yeah, absolutely right. We're all full of confidence when we walk into that Vegas casino, ready to put down our entire mortgage onto red and see if it comes in or not, until it goes onto black and you've lost everything and you're full of regret and things just aren't there. And I think that's how I look at it, because I know I was one of the bigger advocates for want to see Barkley get his record. I think whilst he's healthy, you don't think about the injury. Heaven forbid that they had played him and he had got injury. You're absolutely right. I'm over it. I think it's like in the moment people wanted to see him play and get the record, but I think now the moment's gone. People have got over it pretty quickly and are much more appreciative to be in the position that we're actually in, which is he's not got the record, but we've got a rested Saquon Barkley going into a playoff run, which we all know we would absolutely prefer all day long. So, like I said, all should be healthy and well rested for the playoff run, beginning the same way as the opening of the regular season, welcoming the Green Bay Packers to a home game, albeit this time the home game is about 8,000 miles closer to Philadelphia than it was at the start of the season. As we know, the Eagles used up one of their extra home game from this season in the 17th game on Friday Night Football, welcoming the Packers into Sao Paulo Stadium, which was a bit of a slip and slide. Quite early in the season to really tell what the team was. A lot of rust. There's a lot of the teams are definitely a million miles away from both of them from where they were in that game. It was a really good game considering the conditions, and I'm kind of like on that basis. I think it's going to be a really good game for the neutrals. I expect it's probably going to be one of the highlighted games of the weekend to watch the rematch with Jordan Love coming back into the link, but less likely to be missing tackles. CJ Gardner-Johnson is a completely black and white player from what he was at the start of the season, where we were sort of hounding him for missing tackles and that, albeit in those conditions. There was still, oh God, is this the CJ we've got back? And things have turned out different. So I'm looking forward to this game as much from an Eagles fan, but I think it's going to be one of the standout games of the weekend. Hurts should be out of the concussion protocol, as we've spoken about. He's going to be he was limited yesterday. It looks like he's out on the practice field again today. I would expect him to be a full practice at the end of it, and then early sort of Friday, Saturday, he's going to be cleared. Fingers crossed. I think that's the expectation. I don't think there's anything that's come out, Tony, to say otherwise. You expect him, Jalen Hurts, to be full go, ready to go, like you said a moment ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And just another side note, obviously, the head coaching carousel has begun already. Lots of interviews going around, and Eagles fans will be still a little bit bitter about 2022 with Jonathan Gannon. leaving us shortly after the Super Bowl defeat to the team that was based in the area where the Super Bowl took place. All really smoke and mirrors. We got a draft pick out of it, but we lost the Super Bowl, and there always feels like a tinge of sadness with that one, because you never know if someone's fully committed if they're about to get a head coaching job. And to be fair, Jonathan Gannon's still there. He's still doing a good job, so it's worked out well for him. But this time of year is always a bit touchy for the teams that are in the playoffs with good coordinators looking for head coaching jobs, interview requests. I don't know if that's a new thing, Tony. I don't know if you can educate me. Don't worry if you can't, but it feels very much that they're talking about more requests than actual interviews. So there's a request for Kellen Moore to be interviewed by the Jags and the Saints. But that feels like very much like it's just like they're getting they're taking their ticket at the deli counter and they're just waiting for the availability.
I'm not entirely sure of the rules. Obviously, the Cardinals and Jonathan Gannon broke them, hence the reason that we got the draft pick that you've just mentioned. I'm not sure what the rules are as far as teams that are still in the playoffs. I actually thought that teams weren't allowed to approach to request an interview, because obviously it begins to distract not only the coach but the players as well as to what could happen in the future. But certainly the carousel is moving, and it's picking up pace with Jared Mayo, Antonio Pierce, Doug Peterson, and the Jets coach, his name is escaping
Salah.
me for the time. No, he'd gone already. So there's the vacancy there as well. So there's a lot to go after. There's a lot to go after, and of course, you become the victim of your own success. And I think it's really heartening that Vic Fangio has come out and said, "Listen, I'm happy where I am." That gives us the necessary stability, regardless of how deep into the playoffs we actually go. So I think it says a lot for Vic Fangio, and I think you've got to expect with a team that's had the success that we've had this season that Kellen Moore would be on someone's list somewhere. So no doubt the requests will continue to come in. I just hope that doesn't distract us and give us an excuse as to what defocused if the worst happened and we didn't actually get through Sunday or any subsequent game on the way to New Orleans.
Yeah, and there's something that I've taken from it in the similar vein of what happens with the Chiefs defensive coordinator. Name is escaping me, but we all know who I'm talking about. That the fact that he's resisted and not really that interested in a head coaching job, and that's going to be the foundation for how the Chiefs have maintained sort of success. So I'm hoping that kind of similar fashion follows with the Eagles, that we managed to keep Fangio quite happy and content in defensive coordinator role for a good few years, and that gives us a really solid foundation to sustain any potential success that we may experience this season and any future seasons down the line. I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways. I mean, if Kellen Moore goes, personally, I feel like I can take it or leave it. I feel like he's had a good impact, but there's been some issues we've spoken about this season with him and Jalen Hurts. He's got maybe a slightly overcomplicated system that I think I wouldn't, as much as we don't want Jalen Hurts to yet again have another offensive coordinator, for another year. Personally, I'm not that bothered if he ends up going.
That's the key thing for me. I think the individual and what he's brought to the team. When you say it's questionable, he's obviously an expert in his field, and he's got a fairly proven track record now as Kellen Moore. But it's just another year of change for Jalen, and you just kind of want the lad to get a break of having 2 or 3 years of consistency and stability, and to be honing his craft a bit further. And we have the debate often about whether Jalen is elite or not. Possibly one of the reasons that's just kind of stunting his development into being elite is just this chopping and changing of the playbook and the guy who's calling the plays. But you're right. Steve Spagnuolo, by the way, at the Chiefs. At the Chiefs, and there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that it's not just Andy Reid who is creating the dynasty there. It's the consistency that they have in their defense in particular that's just creating something that becomes a bit of an immovable object when it gets to this stage of the season. And I have to say, my fears about the Chiefs have having convinced myself in weeks 1 through 10 that they were pants. My fears about the Chiefs are just growing and growing and growing now. But we'll come on to that when we get into the predictor.
Yeah. Right. 20 minutes in, still not got onto the game. We're going to spend a short amount of time on the game, but it will help you to know that we've not put anything in the bad column this week, purely because any bad points don't really carry much water, because a lot of the reasons will be explained by resting players, inexperienced players, rusty players, or just not having your starting 11 out there. So, overall thoughts on the game from me first, Tony, before I come on to you, is that it went exactly how I wanted it to go. It went exactly how I expected it to go, and I saw enough little nuggets of hope for the future or depth to sort of make me actually feel like, to improve my mood. So it wasn't just like a nothing game. It's made me, I feel in a more confident position post that game than I did before, despite us resting, Jalen not being at the helm, and we'll get on to the main reasons why. But that's my general overarching thoughts. Do you have any sort of any general thoughts and feelings about the game as a whole?
No, we've touched on the key point for me, and that was getting through the game unscathed. What was nice, I guess, was to chalk up another W. Take the end of season tally to 14-3. It's always nice back when you look back in the annals of history and see a 14-3 for a season. But I think quite importantly, it maintains momentum. You get into a habit of winning, whether or not you have been dressed and on the field, or having a bit of a carry on the sideline, as many of the starters who were resting were doing. So we won the game. There's a couple of notables, I think, that, like you say, it gives us just a bit of confidence that if someone did go down, then there may well be a bit of backup that could come in and provide a bit of support. Obviously not to the same level as the starters, and we'll come on to those shortly. But I think the biggest surprise for me was that we did win the game. It was as strong a New York team as I think could have been put out. They weren't carrying any injuries, and our backups did the business there. You've got to question how motivated the Giants would be, particularly after the slating they took for giving away the number 1 pick the week before by taking their win column to the 3, is it? 3 they ended up winning. So no, I can't add any more to what you've already said, Phil, and what I've supplemented it with. Just delighted to get through it, first and foremost without any further injury, and secondly with a W in the column.
Okay, well, yeah, let's move on to Tanner McKee, as you, or Tanner, I've got the key, I've got the secret, as I like to keep annoying people with in the WhatsApp group, because every time I see Tanner McKee, I have that song in the back of my head.
I have it now. Thanks for that.
No worries. It was a good performance. I think we saw a lot from in the preseason. He and the last 2 preseasons he's looked good, and it can be a bit misleading how good players, especially quarterbacks, perform when it's a multitude of backups and reserve players and hopefuls of making rosters. But there was just something about his confidence, his ability, his motion that I always got a bit of. He looks like he's going to be really good if wherever he ends up getting a proper full-time starting job, or if he becomes a full-time backup. That you've got a player in Tanner McKee that you can have that little bit of confidence, that you don't feel so worried that the sky that there's not so much of a glass floor when it comes to the quarterback position, that as soon as Hurts is not available, not playing, that you've got nothing behind him and it's over. Like, as soon as Hurts can't return to the game, you see Hurts questionable to return in a game, like, right, well, that's game. This game's done. The season's done. But with someone like Tanner McKee in the backfield, and I don't get that at all with Kenny Pickett. Not to sort of really hammer too much that I don't like Kenny Pickett. I didn't think he did a terrible job, but there's just something about Tanner McKee and his performance that, yes, it was against the Giants, but there's just there's little nuggets here or there in his game that give me quite a good feeling about him. He's we're not after a quarterback controversy. I'm not looking for that. I mean, I think ultimately we'd be sad to see him go if Howie's main goal is to get him going for a few draft picks. I think we'll all be a bit disappointed to lose a player like that. Although we'll be happy to see him get a job somewhere else. But there's just that element of that he's a perfect guy to have around because he's still a rookie, still on a rookie contract, earning pennies on the dollar, and to have that kind of personality in the locker room behind Hurts. I think he could come into a game and do a job, see a game out. I think if McKee maybe had come in against the Commanders, could we have still won that game compared to with Pickett? I don't know. That's probably a bit of a stretch and probably unfair to put that kind of assessment on Kenny Pickett, because in those moments you're sort of not expecting to play and you get thrown in, so he probably wouldn't have had as good a performance. But it's like I said, it's the first time with Hurts as quarterback one that I feel the most at ease when thinking about a terrible instance where Hurts might not see out a game. He played with poise, confidence, and more importantly, his accuracy and ability is on show. He's probably got the highest concentration of touchdowns to passes thrown that I've seen from a backup quarterback in an incredibly long while. I mean, normally they come in, they're handing the ball off, they're not doing an awful lot, they're just playing it safe because then they're just not confident, experienced enough. But Tanner McKee come in, he's like in his first actual snaps, he had 5 throws, 2 passing touchdowns. I mean, that's not to be sniffed at. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. To do that in the NFL in any game whatsoever is impressive. He ended up in this game with 27 completed passes out of 41 attempts for 269 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. Now that's 100.6 quarterback rating. Any team outside of the Eagles or in the NFL looking for a quarterback right now is going to be looking at that and going, ooh, tasty. That's something to be noted with. And I think the thing for me is that he is different from Hurts, but he's able to operate in that offense. That's the main takeaway from me. Is that normally you have either a similar quarterback, like we had Mariota, purely because he had little inklings of Hurts, and we've had Gardner Minshew was sort of a little bit different from Hurts, but just couldn't quite get it done against the Dallas Cowboys in 2022. I feel like he's different, but he can still operate that offense in a different way. And I think that's the most important takeaway from me. So in the essence of keeping it short, which I definitely have not, Tony, give me your overall appreciation on Tanner McKee and his performance in this game and how it makes you feel moving forward.
Just a couple of things to really build on what you've said. I think if he'd have come in for the few snaps that he did against the Cowboys, and Hurts had then been back for the New York game, you would have said, well, he did what he needed to do, but the fact he's coming and just backed it up against the Commanders, against the Giants there, and he did it for a full game. And like you said, he did it with poise, he did it with aplomb. He's now put himself very much in the front foot to be the backup. If Liam was on, he'd be saying that, well, with a QB rating of over 100, he must be elite, and should we start doing some polls on the WhatsApp group and stuff? So we'll not get into that. But there's a degree of confidence there, and you're absolutely spot on that he's not in the Jalen Hurts mold. If anything, you look at the likes of a Dak Prescott, who's a bit more of a pocket passer with a bit more of mobility, who's worked with Kellen Moore in the past. So you can understand why, with that type of build, with that type of arm, how he could potentially get on with the likes of Kellen. I mean, it's not Jalen Hurts, let's be clear, but is there a need to go out and spend a fortune on a Kenny Pickett or someone next season? Or actually, if you're going to go out and get a draft pick by releasing one of your QBs, then release Pickett. The thing with Tanner McKee as well is he's been with us since the day and minute that he walked into the NFL. So he has the Eagles culture, he has the ethos, he has the mentality. He's not bringing in baggage from another franchise. And I think that goes for a lot, particularly in a team like the Eagles. So, yeah, it was.
He did it behind. Sorry, he did it behind a rested and depleted, whichever you want to look at it. What I kept thinking about was that put any other quarterback in that situation that we've ever had as a backup, and we would not be expecting even a smidge of anything out of him. But he almost performed. If you want to extrapolate that performance behind that O-line into what would have happened if he'd had a fully fit, fully functioning O-line, how much better could it have been? Sorry, Tony, to interrupt.
Well, I mean, you put him behind, and he's not exactly playing against the strongest D-line in the world, but he's also playing behind a backup group of offensive line, and there are some pretty decent players in that offensive line that we put out, and that's where our strength and depth will hopefully stand us in such good stead as we try and progress through to New Orleans in a few weeks' time. But you imagine him behind Mailata and Lane Johnson and Landon Dickerson and McKee Becton. All of a sudden, you're into the potential that he maybe has got something. Could he play a Foles role from 2017? Well, jury's out in that one, but we didn't know that Foles was going to do that in 2017 going into 2018 either. So it's exciting, Phil. It's still a great unknown, but actually you're beginning to look at Tanner McKee and saying, well, maybe you could be the future backup. In a way that with a fair degree of confidence, you're looking at Kenny Pickett and saying, you're not.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good place to be in. But anyway, let's quickly move on to the one or two other points in the good column before we get onto the preview. And the other one I want to talk about, and I know you've got a particular opinion about Dotson, which will be good to get your thoughts on shortly. But it was good to see him step up in his chance as wide receiver 1 on the day. He is the most experienced and prestigious wide receiver we had on the day. And yes, I know Anaya Smith, Johnny Wilson, and Jenkins, the tight end that got the touchdown as well, that had maybe had better days in terms of the highlight reel, but it felt like he had a significant amount more opportunity and he made use of them, which for me is a good sign. He had 7 catches for 97 yards. Now that's I would loved it if he got 100 yards, but I think for all intents and purposes, let's consider he got 100 yards. Had a 100-yard game and he off 7 passes, which is AJ Brown territory for an average day and the AJ Brown world. That's the kind of thing that we need to know is there. Same way as Tanner McKee is, we need to know that that's there, and now we do. We feel a lot better about the quarterback situation. Dotson's performance surely it should make us feel better about the wide receiver position and the fact that he's had a quiet season, but given the fact that we rely so heavily on wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, tight end 1, and RB 1, the fact that he stepped up in that game to show like, hey, when you need me, coach, I'm here. Surely that's the most important thing in this situation, Tony.
I can't disagree with the argument, Phil, but what's happened in the previous 17 games or the previous 16 games, 17 weeks to that maybe tells me something a bit different. We need to remember that we traded a 3rd round pick for this guy. So the capital that we invested in him was huge. And we also need to remember that we've had a good number of weeks over the course of the season where either Devonta Smith's not been playing or AJ Brown's not been playing. So he's had the opportunity to be wide receiver 2 for at least 3, 4, 5 weeks of the season, and he's just not stepped into it. I said to you prior to that actually pressing the go live button on the pod that I think he's one of the biggest busts of the NFL trade window this year. A 3rd round pick for what he's delivered.
So who are you putting in that group? Obviously, I appreciate what you're saying that he's the biggest bust, but there's got to be others out there, and who would you consider above him that might be in that sort of bracket?
Devonta Adams going to Jets. I think that was a bust. Albeit he has kind of blown up in the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, which kind of coincides with Rodgers playing a wee bit better as well. But if you look at where the value has been created and teams going out and getting other players, not necessarily for draft capital, but Saquon coming to us, Josh Jacobs going to our opponents on Sunday. There has been some really beneficial moves for teams. There was a few other trades that came after the Dotson trade, which left us all saying, I don't think it was Darnell Mooney, or I can't remember who it was, but there was 2 or 3 wide receivers that get traded within a few days of one another as the trade window closed, and they were for 4th rounds and 5th rounds. I don't think any of them have particularly set the header on fire, but a 3rd round investment is a huge investment, and a 3rd round pick's a huge investment. And can you honestly look at what he's delivered over the course of this season since he was traded to us and said, yeah, we've had value for that? And I don't think we can.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I'm not disputing the fact that he's not lived up to the capital that we've invested in. I guess I'm maybe a more forgiving person, that at the end of the day, it's what you do in the most important moment of your life. So if he ends up having a catch in the Super Bowl or any of the playoff games that ends up helping us win the game, icing the game, scoring a touchdown, then it will be worth it. Like, the 3rd round pick to win a Super Bowl is absolutely nothing.
For sure.
If we don't, and I know that's probably like,
I just don't have the confidence that he's going to do that, though, Phil.
But this game itself gives you that sort of smidge to go, well, you can do it.
The belief that it could be there. It could be there. Will it be there? Question. But it's shown that there is the potential. And I guess in a way, the trade for Dotson was similar in nature to the Golden Tate trade in 2018, and the JHI trade in 2017 as we were on our way to the Super Bowl. I think there was some question marks over their validity, and there you go. Golden Tate comes up trumps in the double doink game, saves a bacon there, and JHI played the role that he played on the way to Minneapolis in 2018. So
there's definitely a theme.
Who knows?
There's definitely a theme with Howie's acquisitions this season, going for former 1st round talent that's maybe about to fall off the off the conveyor belt of talent that people are looking at. Mekhi Becton is obviously the key on. We're focusing on how well he's done, and shout out to him and the little video that came out from the Eagles showing how emotional he was about making the playoffs, because considering his journey, being a 1st round pick, being injured, let go by the Jets, and then coming to the Eagles and changing positions as well, and then being such a success this season coming in. And the Cine, or however you pronounce his name, the acquisition at defensive position that we've acquired this week, another 1st round pick by the Vikings, who traded, I believe they traded up to the Chiefs pick at number 32 that year. Took Cine, and then he got injured, a bit like Becton. So in that encapsulating point, it's that I'm hoping that Dotson eventually does have that moment himself. I'm hoping Cine does, and I'm hoping that this theory of how we moving on from signing every Georgia Bulldog under the sun to signing every 1st round pick that's about to get let go or has been let go by a team ends up working. And that's the reason why we love Howie. He definitely has a modus operandi when it comes to what he wants to do when he's acquiring talent year on year. So let's hope that Dotson that this is a sign that he is coming into form. No one's going to give a shit about 16 games. If in the 17th game he does that, and then in the playoff he starts to sort of really come in with those key catches.
Yes,
so
you're right.
Let's just hope for the best and be grateful that there's a chance that he can do that. Lastly, before we finish off the game review, I just wanted to touch on the linebacker depth, because Dean and Zach Bourne were rested, as I mentioned. So their reliefs, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Axman Jr., and Oren Burks. I was going to say Traylon Burks then. Definitely not one player. they were the ones who were picked to step in and fulfill the linebacker roles to replace those two on the field, and they did a more than serviceable job. Like I said, this is what I'm looking at when they're reviewing this game. It's all about the depth and what it means for your confidence in the depth behind the players that we know are great. We want to know the players behind them coming in are great as well. Burke's got 17 tackles, Tony. 8 on his own, and 2 tackles for loss. But that's Zach Bourne territory. We've been praising Zach Bourne all season for those kind of stats, so he deserves his credit for that performance, in particular, right?
Phenomenal numbers. And it doesn't matter who the opposition is, right? Because you'll have the doubters, Phil, who will say, "Oh, come on, it was the New York Giants. It was the 18th game of the season. There was nothing at play." But fundamentally, the 22 guys that are on the field, whether you're offense or defense, whether you're a Giants player, whether you're an Eagles player, you're playing for contracts for next year. You're playing for trades. You're playing as hard as you can possibly play. And let's be clear, it's the 1% of the 1% of the 1% that's on that field, because that's the level of talent. They are NFL players, and he absolutely smashed it. So, for the first time in a long time, and you've written in the notes, we've fallen in love with the linebacker position. And for the first time in a long time, as long as we can tie up Zach Bourne on a longer term deal, it'll not be featuring in our conversations about who or what position we need to trade for, who we need to be drafting, etc., because I think we're set in that position for a good 2 or 3 years to come, particularly with that level of backup.
Yeah, perfectly surmised on that point. That's exactly what I was going for. It was good that they came in. I didn't know until I looked at the box score to see how well they'd done, but that's a big takeaway for me, is that we want to know that depth's there. The cornerback and safety role seems pretty good. But it's the linebacker role that was up in the air going into the season. We found our two. We had Devin White come in and fucked off. We were a little bit like we were okay, but how okay are we? And now we know that Burks and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. have that ability in them. Again, like Tanner McKee, makes you feel just that little bit more confidence going in, that during the game, needing to be called upon, that they've got the ability and the experience and the confidence to do that. So yeah, that's the 20-13 win over the New York Giants, takes us to 14-3. We're already locked into the 2 seed, so it had no bearing on our seeding. But it was, like I said, like you mentioned, Tony, it was good to see that extra W in the column, because we've done that previous years where we've lost the last game. I think we lost last year against the Giants going into the playoffs because various reasons, obviously. But it still hurts. It's still like, it'd be nice to have 14 wins.
The main reason that we were pish.
Yeah, that too. But
for
I was going to
all the last 6 or 7 games of the season, it's a very, very different feeling for us going into the playoffs this year.
Yeah, right, Tony. Well, that is the last bit of negativity in this pod, right? Going forward, from now on, we've covered the end of the season. There's no more bad points, good points, downright sexy. It is all about playoff football. But before that, shall we do a Loch Lomond Rad read? I think so.
Let's do it.
Celebrate victories, rally through challenges, and bond with fellow fans as you toast with a dram of Loch Lomond single malt whisky. From tailgating gatherings to watch parties at home, Loch Lomond whisky becomes an essential companion, enhancing the moments that make football so extraordinary. It's the perfect accompaniment, from the joy of victory to the bittersweet moments of defeat. Loch Lomond offer a wide range of malts, with their flagship perfectly balanced, and signature expressions Inchmoan and Inchmuirn to suit any taste palate. Celebrate greatness on and off the field this season with a perfect balance of Loch Lomond whisky and Eagles football. From the first pour to the crowd roar. Fly Eagles fly.
Go Birds indeed. Looking ahead to our playoff opponent, the Green Bay Packers, coming into the link, as I mentioned, this time a little bit close to home. It was a little bit up in the air. I don't know about you, Tony, but I very much enjoyed the end to Sunday's football events. Still watching the Commanders and the Packers games as they were they flip-flop from who was going to be playing us to who wasn't going to be playing us. And I don't know what your thoughts were at the time and how you feel now, but playing the Packers instead of the Commanders, for me, I found it hard to pick either one, because I think on one hand I was very much looking forward to the revenge game, given the Commanders their comeuppance for how confident they were at beating two backup quarterbacks in one game, or beating Kenny Pickett coming in at short notice, and the dirty hit from the Commanders defender. But I didn't really want to face them in the first playoff game, because I hate it. It's a bit like, when you play your closest rival in an important game, you just think you're more worried about losing than you are winning. And I don't know if it's the same for the players, but if it is, then that's not a good mentality to have. And with the Packers, with Watson being out, as we'll get into in a minute, and Jordan Love having an elbow injury, which he was taken out as a precaution, so he's probably going to be playing. I feel like I'm happy, but only a smidgen more than the Commanders. I don't know about you. Like, in terms of who we're facing, I'm glad we're facing the Packers personally.
I have to say, I'm kind of with you, Phil. And just going back to what you were saying about watching the end of the regular season, not only were the Packers and the Commanders flip flopping in terms of seed 6 and 7, but of course the Rams and the Bucks were flip flopping as well between 3 and 4, and then of course we had the big one on Sunday night going into Monday morning that was going to decide the 1 and the 5 seed. So it was quite a strange feeling going into week 18 of a regular season, and look at an NFC side of the NFL, and not really knowing what the heck was happening apart from one team, and that was us. So it was kind of quite nice just to kick back and open up the popcorn and the whiskey and just watch the carnage ensue.
Is that a recommended pairing, Tony? Popcorn and whiskey?
Champagne piaf and toffee popcorn is the most incredible pairing. So yes, I can wholeheartedly recommend to any of our listeners, particularly our male listeners, if you're looking to buy your partner, your good lady, a gift, get her a bottle of champagne piaf and some toffee popcorn. It is honestly, it sounds the weirdest thing. It's the most incredible pairing that you can have with a sparkling wine and something a bit sweet. But anyway, I digress.
Sorry, if you do, guys, if you do buy some champagne for your missus and some toffee popcorn, please film the reaction we've given to them, because I guarantee you their face will be like, "Oh, champagne and toffee popcorn."
Indeed. But going back, you've just done a Liam and me and completely thrown me off track. Would I have preferred the Commanders over the Packers? Do you know what? It's playoff football. I'm just delighted to be in the playoffs. I don't care who you play. You've got to beat who's in front of you. There's the element of familiarity with the Commanders, and the one thing about them that I don't think I could bear going into the off season would have been all the narrative about Jaden Daniels and how he beat the Bucks, how he beat the Eagles, how he beat and I'm just a bit tired of the whole Jaden Daniels narrative. I think he's had a phenomenal season. But I don't think I could stand the thought of him coming into Link, and who knows, it may still have to happen.
I was going to say, I completely forgot the fact that if we both win our games, that will be happening anyway. So we may get our chance for the good bits, which, like I said, handing them their asses.
No, it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen if
not at all.
If Washington were to beat the Bucks, then we would get the winners of. We would get the winners of the Vikings against the Rams coming into Link, because Washington 6 would go to 1, 5 would come, 5 or 4 would come at 2. So the only way we can get the Commanders is if someone goes into Detroit and beats them and then has to come to the Link. So it could well be an NFC Championship game, which would be a bit of a turn up for the books. But But no, I'm quite happy with the Packers. You've rightly said in our preview notes that they've lost a bit of momentum coming into the tail end of the season. They were victims, unfortunately for them, and unfortunately for Christian Watson and Packer fans, that he's taken quite a gnarly injury at the end that's done him for the season. And I think you're spot on. I think Jordan Love will play on Sunday. That he's probably just suffering from a bit of a banged humerus that wasn't particularly funny. It might have been for us.
You spent too many times in the GP surgery. That joke's definitely come from your local GP.
Absolutely,
I swear.
Absolutely. It's like going to the dentist at 2:30. I'm more than happy whoever we get, Phil. It's when you get into the latter stages of the playoffs that you begin to look. Certainly, I begin to look at. I would quite like them to beat them. For example, when we get into the divisional round, whoever it is, and it's certainly not going to be us, but whoever it is that goes into Ford Field in Detroit, I will be rooting for them with every sinew of my being. Not because I'm necessarily that fearful of Detroit, but I just want the NFC Championship game to be played in Philadelphia.
Absolutely.
It's playoff football, baby. Bring it on.
Right, so moving on from that, quick touch on the injury report. We haven't had tonight's injury report on Thursday as we're recording this, but I've picked up bits and pieces as I can. So, like I said, Hurts was limited on Wednesday, progressing through the protocol. Pickett's still limited with a rib issue, so that's why Book's probably been signed to the practice squad because he'll get elevated if Pickett is unable to fulfill his backup quarterback duty roles or emergency quarterback duty roles. AJ Brown, as of today, did not practice, although, like I said, the indication is that they're just trying to rest him as much as possible to make sure that they don't make his injury worse before Sunday. So that's not great, but it's not as terrible as it could be. AJ Brown missing another playoff game would be another narrative. We do not need WIP ramming down our throats for a week and a half afterwards. For the Packers, Jay Alexander and Christian Watson are both out for this game, at least, maybe more if they did progress through, which is a huge dent on both sides of the ball for them. Christian Watson is a massive deep threat for Jordan Love and probably their best wide receiver when fit, although they do have quite a number of talents that you could argue they've got about a 1A Bravo, Charlie, Delta, rather than any actual true depth. Quay Walker and Evan Williams are both back at practice. They missed the last 3 games, so whilst they might be back for this game, they are going to be cold, hopefully, so they're not going to be quite up to the speed they usually are. So those are the injury reports as we have them right now. If Tony's on his game, might have any further updates as I go through the rest of this preview. The stat line are pretty close. I think generally on the stat line, looking at the rankings of the various parts of the offense and defense and special teams, obviously the Eagles are better in most areas, and especially in defense, being ranked number 1, which they secured, which isn't an accolade that's specifically talked about, but they secured the best defense of the 2024 regular season, which is something that we need to really acknowledge, considering they were 26th in 2023. Harking back to Vic Fangio's impact, that's a stark turnaround, which gives you all sorts of confidence going into any game against any opponent. But the Packers are hanging around. None of their rankings are in the lower half of the scale of 32 teams, so they're not to be sniffed at, and hence why they're coming into the playoffs with a fairly decent record. I think they're 11-12 wins themselves, so they're not to be sniffed at. Like I said, we played them in Brazil. There wasn't really much to go on in that game, but where the teams are from where they were then to where they are now is drastically different. So I'm looking at it going, I feel okay, Tony, based on where the rankings are. I don't feel great, but I think overarching, like the defense being ranked number 1, how dominant it's been, how we've been able to rest players. Going into this game, I feel confident that there's very little reason why we shouldn't come out with this game with a dub and going into the divisional round. What about you?
I'm in the same place. I think we get the win, but of course, when you're into playoff football and there's a risk of being one and done, winning in, then that's where the anxiety, that's where the stresses, that's where the trepidation comes into things as well. And let's not kid ourselves. Green Bay have had a phenomenal season. They lost Jordan Love for the first 2 or 3 games after we took care of business down in Sao Paulo in Brazil. So any team that makes the playoff, you can maybe argue with the NFC South this year. The AFC South over in the other conference, are going to be a good football team. And with I can't remember either, Phil, if it was an 11-6 or a 12-5 record that they had. It's a good record in what has been a phenomenally good league and good division that they've played in this year, playing alongside the Lions and the Vikings. So, they've got to be taken seriously. Like you say, they've got some strength and depth, wide receivers who can play slot, who can play over the top, and the likes of Romeo Dobbs and Jalen Reed, and their defense is always solid. I can't remember a Packers team that had a poor defense. So it's going to give us a stiff test on Sunday. It's a game that I'm so excited for. I just get giddy when it comes into this time of the season, and it just feels so nice going into this game on Sunday versus the feeling that we had going into the Bucks game this time last year.
Does the fact that we're number 2 seed and it's at the Link have much of an impact, a significant impact, or not bother you at all? Would it matter if we were going into Green Bay?
I think it does make a difference. Yeah, absolutely. We have such a partisan crowd at the Link. We have a reputation for our supporters in the NFL, rightly or wrongly. I think we all wear it as a bit of a badge of honour and have a bit of a wry grin on our faces as a result of it. But we've got to be clear that the Link must be a really intimidating place to come. It's noisy, it's passionate, it's partisan. As is
Lambeau.
You wouldn't want to go into Green Bay. I don't think you'd want to go into Arrowhead. You wouldn't necessarily want to go into Buffalo's home ground, particularly on a snowy weekend. And I think the Link is one of those stadia that other players will look at and say, I really don't fancy going there. So I'm delighted it's a home game. I think it's critical that you get the division win and you're either the 1, 2, 3 or 4 seed. So at least you're getting one game at home and get the wheels moving on your playoff run. And last season the wheels had well and truly fallen off. Going into Raymond James, which we've got a bit of a hoodoo over us at Ray J. I think it was inevitable that we're going to be beaten, but I think we can. I think we can beat anyone at Lincoln Financial Field, and I don't think it's an any given Sunday thing. I would have confidence regardless of who we were playing at the Link. Particularly with the team that we have just now, particularly with the momentum that we have just now, with the injury report. I think it would be a huge blow if AJ didn't make it. And of course, he didn't make it for the Tampa Bay game last year, and I think that had a huge bearing on the outcome. Albeit, I think the outcome was already predetermined with the slide that we were on anyway. But we're not on a slide. We are on a run just now, and I really don't give a shit who comes into the Link. We're going to do them. So,
current line is 5-point favourite. Going on your usual behaviour of only covering the spread or not, can you give me your sort of thoughts on the 5 points and your prediction on whether the Eagles will cover?
It's really interesting, Phil, right? Because the line opened on Monday at minus 3.5.
Yeah.
And minus 3.5, whether you're going to do a teaser or whether you're going to do a spread is a classic number to bet the underdog. So it's very interesting that the line has moved, and maybe that actually tells you that the guys in the desert in Las Vegas are maybe thinking that Jordan Love is trending to not playing, because there must be
or that Hurts is definitely playing because of the concussion protocol when the line was announced.
Possibly, but a minus 3.5 line kind of makes sense because it gives the Eagles the obligatory 1.5 points for home field advantage, and then a further 2 points on top of it, as a marginal favourite. And there's, if you listen to the talking heads, Phil, and I know you do, I do, we listen to a number of podcasts, people are still really high on the Packers. And I can understand why they've come out of this division, as I said a few minutes ago. So minus 3.5 felt about the right line. There's obviously been some heavy money coming for the Eagles to move it out, not just 1 point, but 2 full points out to 5.5, depending on where you look. However, I don't give a shit. We're covering 3.5. We're covering 5.5. We're covering 3.5. We're covering 5.5. I would maybe even be teasing that up to over a score. The 7.5. I am just really confident. And again, I've said it in the pod before, Phil, I hate it when I find myself in this position of confidence, because it makes the blow of defeat even more crushing. But we're winning on Sunday. We're winning on Sunday, and we're covering the spread.
I think your record this season has actually been pretty good in terms of your predictions for the spread, especially when looking back.
I've got one wrong, and that was the Commanders game.
More importantly, the one I'm thinking of is the Panthers game. As we spoke about, you were supremely sort of reserved about it, and it turned out to be absolutely spot on. So the fact that you're confident gives me confidence, because the fact that you're confident gives me confidence. To put it the right way around, means that if you're confident, I don't see any reason why I should be contradicting you in any sort of way. I think I haven't really given it much thought because I've only just looked at the spread, but I feel like, yeah, that also gives you confidence, because you know that Vegas is very rarely wrong, and it's going to take a really strong performance from the Green Bay Packers. They're going to have to be, if we were a Green Bay Packers pod right now, the sort of topics we'd be talking about is what have we got to do to have a chance against the Eagles? And they're going to have, and we would be saying we're going to have to be firing on all cylinders, both sides of the ball. Quarterback's going to have to be as a game. Wide receivers are going to have to pick up the slack for Watson. The defense is just going to have to pick up the slack from J.X. Alexander not being on the field. So I think sometimes that's the way I approach games, is I always try to put myself in the other camp, because if I feel really confident going, I wish I was in the Packers camp, then I'd be like, well, that's not a good sign, because they're obviously probably really confident. But the fact that I look at them and go, they're going to be thinking we're going to have a particularly good performance to win, just kind of gives you that indication that the Eagles, as long as they play their game and they're well rested, like you said, we've not come in on the slump. They have. There's so many little different nuggets that you can clump together and go, there's just, if we don't win on Sunday, it's going to probably be because we've beaten ourselves and we've not performed to our standard, because if our standard plays out, then it's almost a no-brainer. It's automatic.
Or we've taken a major injury, and that's probably that injury.
I was hoping to avoid that terminology, Tony, but yeah, thanks.
Yeah, God, I might have just jinxed there.
Yeah, well, let's move on swiftly. So I hope that the jinx gods weren't paying attention at the time. So that's the game cover. We both think there's going to be reasonable confidence. To be honest, I think actually Liam did give me a quick prediction. I don't know if I can quickly draw it up. He thinks that we're going to beat them by 12. Tony, 32-20 is Liam's snap prediction, which is in the ballpark. I don't like the 20. I like it maybe more of sub 20. But I think the 30-point mark is minimum for the expectation for the Eagles coming in. We should be scoring 4 touchdowns on the day, maybe an extra point here and there, and getting it to about 31. So yeah, I think that's.
I think that's a sound prediction by the boy. I really do.
It's on the defense ultimately, isn't it, Tony?
I think every game, Phil, every game in these playoffs, and we'll come on to it when we come on to our predictions, our playoff prediction tracker. Particularly when we get into the likes of Detroit, it's going to be how can you put points on the Eagles, and if it comes down to a shootout, I've got every confidence that our defense is going to stop you, whoever you are. And I think Liam is, actually 32-20. If you were going for a correct score, I really like that, Liam. I doff my cap to you, lad. I fancy the Eagles to go over 30, and possibly even hold the Packers to under 20. But no, I think that's a solid prediction.
Yeah, I think I go for more sort of 18 for the Packers, around about the same point. But yeah, good shout, Liam, on the predictions there. So before we finish up here, Tony, we're just going to go over what each of the four of us, that's you, me, Liam, and Mick, has submitted his playoff bracket prediction for the 2024 NFL season. And I am the only one who hasn't gone, spoiler alert, for a Bills-Eagles Super Bowl. And that's not because I don't think the Bills are good, or that it's probably the more logical pick. Like if I was a betting man, that's obviously the lowest odds are going to be, out of the two for what I've gone for. I've gone for the Ravens to make the AFC portion of the Super Bowl. I think the Bills are probably the safer bet because, outside of the Chiefs, it sort of feels too automatic to go for the Chiefs. But I think everyone outside of the Chiefs organization is rooting for anyone but the Chiefs, which Liam knows all too well as the anyone but point of view. I was rooting against Manchester United. Well, now I kind of understand it a little bit more. You just want them to lose. You don't care who. You just want them to lose. So we'll quickly just go through each of our four predictions. I'm not going to go into each individual matchup specifically, but in general, we've all predicted that the Eagles are going to beat the Packers. Obviously, most of us, yes, all of us have gone for the Bucks to beat the Commanders and go through. And the Rams, aside from myself, I've gone from the Vikings to beat the Rams in their matchup, just because I feel like the Sam Darnold train isn't going to end just there. It hopefully will soon, but I feel like the Rams have sort of had a bit of an iffy season. And I think it's just going to be a bit too much, although the fact that the Rams are at home does shade it a bit. But then most of us have gone for having the Lions and the Eagles winning their divisional matchups against the Bucks and the Rams respectively. So I think everyone's had to pick between the Lions and the Eagles, aside from Liam, who was actually gone for the Rams to beat the Vikings and the Rams to then beat somehow the Lions, which I think is probably the most out there bet on there.
The Rams played them so close earlier this season at Ford Field. So, and the Bucks, of course, beat the Lions in their own manner. In their own manner this season. So I think Liam's kind of gone for there's got to be an upset in there somewhere, and I think to your point, there probably isn't any bigger an upset than the one that he's put in. But you know what? I hope he's right, because if he's right, we host the NFC Championship game.
That is very true. I think he's definitely coming from a position of hope as much as realism, because I just think that as much as the Lions have suffered a horrendous amount of injuries, they have just kept going. They are the guy that just won't die. He's been shot in every single limb several times, but he's still plowing on forward, and he's just seemingly unstoppable. I feel like it's going to take us going into Detroit to put that soldier to rest, to finally be one bullet too many before they get there. But they've just got so much talent, and I feel like with a coach like Dan Campbell, they've got that confidence, that arrogance, that belief that no matter what happens, they can be in it. Their limitations are there to see, which was good. Touching back to the Vikings Lions game on Sunday, as you mentioned, both teams seemed very gettable. So when I was watching the highlights back, I wasn't particularly bothered which one ended up winning, although I would have preferred the Vikings to win, just because we would have ended up having to go to Minnesota rather than Detroit. And we've obviously got fond memories of going to the Minnesota Stadium in playoff football. So, but yeah, overall, out of the four of us, we've all gone for generally the same, an Eagles, Bills, Super Bowl / me going for Ravens. Liam's gone a bit out there with his predictions for how we get there. But generally, we've all predicted roughly the same. And I think it's going to be the same across the board in our fan group for who's going to be getting through. We don't really see the Texans, the Chargers doing much. I mean, the Bucks being divisional winners against the Commanders is going to be a nice, tasty game. I think that's why it's been moved. It's been placed on Sunday Night Football. Is that those two teams are quite evenly matched in their spunkiness, their ability, their perkiness to get. Sorry, that's just terrible adjectives to describe those two teams. But they
I
are.
thought we were back to my semi and Brandon Graham and Nolan Smith again.
But I think there are definitely some good matchups. I'm looking forward to this weekend of playoff football, Saturday and Sunday, and one Monday night game. Or is it two? But yeah, one Monday night football game. So I think the belief then that the divisional round for the NFC will be on the Sunday as well. So it'd be nice if we do get through, if we can have a nice 9 p.m. Sunday night slot.
Yeah, that's my big hope as I kicked off with Phil. Given that the three NFC side games are the last three games of the Wildcard weekend, you're kind of then hoping that by default means that the NFC play on the Sunday for the divisional, which makes it work for me in my travel plans, which would be amazing.
Fingers crossed.
Just touching on our predictions. I think with Liam, there's maybe an element of heart and heads with the Rams going into Detroit and doing them over. I have to say, for me, there's an element of heart ruling head in the AFC Championship game that I've predicted, which I've predicted that the Chiefs will play at home against the Buffalo Bills. As I touched on very early in the pod this evening, I have got this horrible, niggling, growing, awful feeling that when the Eagles make it to the Super Bowl, it's going to be a repeat of Phoenix, Arizona, of a couple of years back.
Bring it on, Tony.
I know, but it just fills me with dread, Phil. It really
doesn't me. It honestly doesn't. And I think that's the reason why you say it's a heart versus head picking the Bills are going to beat the Chiefs. I'm just not convinced that the Chiefs are going to have the same outcome. Like they've almost been playing with borrowed time a lot of the time with their recent success. Yes, they have the knowledge, they have the experience and the coaching. They're used to being there, but that doesn't mean that they're going to win every single opportunity they get from here until the end of the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes era. I feel like at some point, we look at the Bucks beating them 3 years ago. Everyone was lumping on Kansas City. Everyone was just convinced that the Patrick Mahomes era was the new Tom Brady, and they got absolutely boat raced in the end. The Bucks went in and they absolutely astonishingly during COVID, admittedly, but it was they're not that team all the time. They can
They weren't that team last year, though, Phil.
Going
into the playoffs is.
But it was the Niners, Tony. It was the Niners, and you've also got to take into consideration.
But Phil, they had to go into Baltimore. They were a 3 seed last year. They had to go into Baltimore in the AFC Championship game, and no one at all at the start of the playoffs was predicting that the Chiefs would win the Super Bowl last year. And I just feel that niggle now, and I don't like it.
Do you remember how badly the Ravens performed in the playoffs last season? They were absolutely terrible.
Absolutely.
So what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying.
They were skanked. Somehow they do it. Somehow they do it.
Somehow they get lucky, but that luck doesn't last forever, Tony. I'm telling you.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right. You're infusing me with optimism. Fuck the Chiefs, Phil. Fuck the Chiefs.
Absolutely. I feel like this. If we have to beat them in the Super Bowl, I feel like the experience and the business of 2022 will be there, and it will be all for us. Rihanna won't be doing a shitty little halftime performance, which for some reason I attribute with I hate Rihanna now because of that.
It's her fault. It was her
It's
fault.
all her fault.
That
The
additional
pregnancy
15 minutes,
announcement was ridiculous.
that additional 15 minutes that gave Patrick Mahomes to get over his fake fucking ankle injury caused us the Super Bowl. Bitch.
Exactly. And
I've
I feel
I've sworn more in the last 3 minutes in this pod than I think I've sworn all season. Fuck the Chiefs, Phil.
I'm fully confident if we have to face the Chiefs in the Super Bowl that I will be back on the fence before the pod. But right now, as it is, with a 1.5 lock low and inch bones in me, that I am not worried about them whatsoever at the moment. They may not even get there, Tony. They may not. They've got to get lucky 3 more times before they get there to win another Super Bowl. And I just feel like this year is when the luck will finally run out. And I feel like their regular season has been indicative of that they have been borrowing as much from their reservoir of luck throughout this season to get themselves to where they are, that there's not going to be anything left come the Super Bowl.
Dr. Phil, you have me convinced. You are officially now my psychologist and psychiatrist.
Brilliant.
Done.
Well,
Done.
I can start charging for that because I could do with the extra money. Right. That's us reaching the end of the pod, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us and listening to us debate on the merits of crystal balls and playoff brackets and home field advantage and season and momentum and injuries and the gods of luck. But we are now at the end of this podcast. We are in the regular season of podcasts. We are going to be entering into our postseason podcasts. Hopefully we'll be coming back with you next week with a continuation of the playoff podcasts series, and we will be celebrating a Green Bay defeat of Jordan Love and whatever merry men he comes into Lincoln Financial Field with. And we will be coming back to you buoyant and backing up every single confident point that we've made tonight. Touching on the podcast notes, actually, just before we do leave, for those that aren't aware, we are giving you an extra podcast per week, Tony. If you listen to Mick's latest edition so far,
it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And for any listeners who are like me and are too lazy, and I'm going to hold up a mirror to myself here, too lazy in order to, really do the research. I love college football. I love football in general. This season hasn't been a good season for my team. I'm a Michigan fan. Not been a good year. And by the way, good luck to Mick's Notre Dame, who play Penn tonight. Quite an interesting.
Be careful how much luck we go, because there's going to be a lot of Penn State fans listening to us as well.
Exactly. So good luck to Mick's team. Obviously, good luck to Penn, a bit closer to home for us and for Birds fans. But Mick has an absolute passion for college football, and the way that comes across in the inaugural pod that he did, which is the journey to the draft. He's picked out 3 players, and will do every year. Every week that he does the pod, all the way through to April, when of course the current crop of talent will come through the college ranks and be selected to play in the NFL. And what Mick does is in typical fashion, as we do in the pod, he looks at the good, the bad, and the downright sexy for three draft prospects. He'll be doing that every week. He kind of did a first round this week, and he's put some names on my radar, certainly, who I'll go and watch a bit of tape of once the playoffs are finished, and begin to get excited. But as I said to Mick in our kind of private host chats, he has done me a massive favour. He's going to give me the information that I really want, not what other people think I need. It's what I want. He did a marvellous job, so please go and listen to the bonus pods that are going to be coming out every week, courtesy of Mr. Mick McGivern. You'll hear his sultry, dulcet Scottish tones, delivering with a passion that none of us can deliver with about college football. So go and listen to that. Well done, Mick. Thanks for doing it, mate.
Yeah, Well said. Thank you. I set you up perfectly there to give the good description of it. Fantastic idea. As soon as you suggested it in the admin group, we were like, yes, we need this. They need that. Everyone needs it, because I am famously known, for those that have been listening to us for years now, know that my draft research consists of about a week or two before doing a few mock drafts, very much in the same way as people pick horses in the Grand National. I look at names and go, oh, he sounds like he might be good. And then I hope that the Eagles draft him, and I come across sometimes when it works out that I kind of know what I'm talking about. I don't. I go off people like Mick, and now Mick is doing a podcast. He's doing a podcast which I can listen to and not have to worry about anything else. So thank you, Mick, for doing that. And you guys are going to absolutely love these podcasts as they come out every week. Like you said, to keep an eye on that. Road to the Draft with Mick McGivern. Touching on it won't just be Eagles stuff. It'll be just general 3 talents that he's picking out, but there's obviously going to be centered around the Eagles and who they may need to take.
There'll be a slant,
Slight to it, but yeah, definitely check those guys out. But anyway, like I said, we've reached the end of the podcast now. Thanks ever so much for listening to me and Tony go through an easy Giants game, looking ahead to the playoffs, looking ahead to the Packers on Sunday night, and let's hope that we go and get that win. Now, I am about to go and get my dinner because I am still hungry at 10 to 10 at night. So thank you, Tony, for helping me get through that as quickly as possible, even though it's been an hour and 20 minutes. We will see you next week, and let's hope that it's another winning pod. Go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.